Hello guys, this is your friend Naruto Audio Fanfics and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto revealed his true power? Naruto times Fem Kyuubi times Fem Haku times Fem Gaara times Fem Deidara times Hinata times Sakura times Ino times Tenten times Anko times Harem, Part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. After some time, Kakashi walked down, though had some trouble getting downstairs, and sat down in the table. Sasuke was brooding in the living room and Sakura was secretly reading a scroll Naruto gave her on some healing jutsu. Naruto was still in his room, reading over the jutsu from the forbidden scroll. He smirked as he read the next one he was about to learn. Fire Style. Great Dragon Claw. Forms a claw of pure fire around the user's arm, adding a boost to most taijutsu and also makes the user's arm invulnerable to all fire attacks to the arm. Does not hurt the user and will work as a shield to cancel out any fire and wind jutsu. A-rank ninjutsu. Interesting. Naruto thought. He didn't need duck ass to hear anything he was saying, so he tried his best to read out loud as little as possible. He suddenly smelled something and put the scroll away in a flash before exiting the room. He then walked downstairs and his nose was soon assaulted by the smell of dinner coming from Tsunami's kitchen reached his nose. He absently licked his lips and started on his way to the table for dinner. Akio was left outside, since she preferred to hunt. A treat every now and then was okay, but she liked rabbits and smaller critters better. She kept running around, looking for anything at all to eat, but they were either very few of them or they were very sneaky. She kept looking around until she felt the strange feeling she was being watched. She heightened her hearing a little, but was too late to dodge the giant form that pounced on her, pinning her to the ground with only one paw. What the hell? She barked, trying to look at who or what hit her. She looked up and saw bright amber eyes just like her own with the slitted pupils. She gasped and asked, "Ni-san." The figure let go of her and took a few steps back. There in front of her stood a fox almost as big as a small horse. It had pitch black fur just like her, its canines were sticking out of its jaws and it had 5 tails behind it. "Hey Akio. Haven't seen you in a while nowadays. What happened? I've heard how you've been coming back home to get some scrolls and leaving to train here. And why do most of the vixens in our clan keep talking about fish cakes?" It asked her, tilting its head to the side. "Do you have fish cakes? I love fish cakes." It then added as all 5 tails began wagging happily. Akio sighed. He may be older, but he still acted childish most of the time. "I suppose you could say I found some. One to be exact. His name is Naruto," Akio said in a calm voice. "Naruto. Sis. I know you're weird and all, but it's not right to name your food." "Shishi, beast, just leave me alone," grumbled Akio to the now named Shishi. The other black fox became covered in black flames before a shape stood upwards, showing a young man standing with a cloak on him, the hood hiding most of his face. He took it off and showed himself to be a rather attractive young man around 15, with platinum blonde hair that was almost as spiky if not spikier than Naruto's hair. In truth, he was about 1,000 years older than Akio, but hid it well. He shrugged and said, "I've seen that Uzumaki kid already, and he seems okay. So I guess I won't burn him alive. However, if he does anything to you, he'll have a change before completely dying a slow and painful death. Understood?" As soon as he finished talking, Akio was in her human form chalking him. "Don't you dare do anything to Naruto-kun. I'll beat you 100 feet into the ground, rip your tails off, and then force feed them down your throat. Do you hear me?" She screamed at him, her eyes flashing to show she was serious. Shishi chuckled. "I thought a moment ago it was Naruto-sama, not Naruto-kun," he said in a teasing tone. Akio realized her mistake and blushed heavily. I mean Naruto-sama. I meant to say Naruto-sama, damn it." She once again shrieked at her brother, who was laughing like a maniac. "Yeah, wait till I tell him about this. It'll be sweet," he said. The Sweet, coming out in an Eric Cartman-like voice. Akio sputtered with her words for a second, before bowing her head and saying, "Fine. Let's just go already." And with that said, the two once again became foxes and began their run back to the house of the bridge builder and his family. Tezuna's house. All of Team 7 and Tezuna's family were now eating dinner, nobody really talking much. That is, until a young kid came walking in with an unhappy look on his face that almost seemed permanent. He sat and ate his dinner quietly, for about 4 seconds, before slamming his fork on the table and shouting at the leaf shinobi. "Why do you try so hard? You're all going to die anyway, so why bother?" I dunno. Maybe it has something to do with the fact that the whole place is being placed under his control and I don't like it one bit. What other reason do we need? Asked Naruto in a matter-of-fact way. He didn't know why this kid was angry, since they were about to help out. Tsunami glared at the boy. "Inari, show some respect. These are the ninja that are going to help us get out of Gato's grasp and save this village." Inari still seemed unhappy and continued to glare at the shinobi. Sakura looked confused. Naruto was frowning in confusion as well. Sasuke was glaring at the kid, and Kakashi didn't seem to notice. "You can't beat Gato. He's too strong. You might as well leave and go back to your cozy homes while we take care of our business," said Inari. Naruto was the next one to glare at the young boy. "Kid, don't think for a second our lives are cozy. Especially my life. You had a family, someone who loves you, someone who protects you. I had no one. You weren't scolded for being alive. I was. You didn't have the woman in the orphanage try to poison your food and have you killed multiple times. I was. The entire village didn't chase you and try to kill you in your birthdays. My village did." He suddenly stopped, took a shaky breath, then stood up and headed to the door. He looked back and said, "I'm off to train. Don't look for me." Kakashi nodded. "Fine, but be careful, Naruto." And with that said, he slammed the door closed and walked out, ignoring Akio who was about 3 feet to his left. He didn't even notice the bigger fox next to her. "So that's your fish cake, ch." He seems pissed. By the time Shishi was done talking, Akio was already after her master. "Oi, wait for me." And he ran after his sister before she could get out of sight. Back inside, Naruto had left a shocked bundle of people. Tsunami was the first to recover. "Kakashi-san. What Naruto-san said, is it true?" Kakashi sighed and ran a hand through his hair. "Actually, he gave you the sweet version. He left out a few things. The only good thing is that there are few that stay neutral towards him, and even fewer that actually care for him," he said, his voice serious and sad. He had complained being an Anbu captain was troublesome if he had to keep chasing a lousy blonde brat. But as soon as he did, everything went south. Not only did Itachi become a nuke nin, but he no longer could protect Naruto as he would always. As a result, Naruto was almost completely alone most of the time. Then again, Naruto became strong from being alone with the black fox, Akio. He would have to ask Naruto about that later. After all, no fox was like that Akio one. Sasuke in the meantime didn't really believe anything the blonde boy said. He probably just made it up to impress everyone here. PFF'd, as if someone can endure that much pain. He's hated, but only because he's a nobody. He thought like the arrogant jackass he is. Sakura on the other hand was shocked. Normally, if she were still some fangirl, she would have claimed Naruto was lying. However, she clearly saw the pain in Naruto's eyes. She realized that in her own way, she also inflicted some pain on Naruto. Maybe not to the same degree as the villagers, but she still denied to give him friendship when he asked for it, even when he needed it the most. Her face took one of sadness as she felt horrible. Kakashi saw her down look and was in a way glad Sakura was paying attention to Naruto instead of ignoring him like she used to. He really needed to thank Naruto for that. He looked at Sasuke, whose face hadn't changed. Not something he wanted to see. The rest that were in the table were still shocked to find an entire village would do such things to a mere child. Inari left the table with tears in his eyes, saying he would be in his room. Zabuza's hut. Zabuza was in his bed, under some covers, healing, and listening to a midget yell. "I can't believe this," shouted the short man. "You're supposed to be the demon of the mist, yet a Jonin and a bunch of brats were able to take you on. Why am I even bothering to pay you?" While the midget ranted, Zabuza rolled his eyes and sighed. Once he finally got paid, he could go back to his village and kill the damn Mizukage. "Shut your trap already. I'll get them next time I see them," growled Zabuza, though it seemed to annoy Gato. "You better, or I won't pay you at all." Gato was about to reach for Zabuza's bandages to teach him a lesson, but was stopped when Haku snapped his wrist. The midget screamed in pain and backed away. His two bodyguards were about to slice Haku into pieces, but found their own blades pressed against their necks. "Get your sorry excuses for hands off of Zabuza-sama, or I will personally castrate you," Haku said in the most menacing voice she could muster. "Let's go. We're done here," ordered Gato, leaving with his goons and sending a glare to both Zabuza and Haku. When the midget was gone, Zabuza turned to Haku as best as he could in his bed and said, "That was unnecessary, Haku. I could have taken care of him myself." He moved slightly below the covers and showed he had a kunai in hand. "I know Zabuza-sama, but you need to heal or you will only make the wounds worse." Standing up, she changed into a pink kimono and took off all her ninja gear. She said she needed some herbs and left. Forest. Naruto was unhappy. Mostly with himself for saying those things to the kid. He didn't know why he got angry, but he just really wanted to scream that Konoha wasn't cozy to him. He actually wanted people to know what Konoha did to cursed children instead of helping them. Maybe he was actually losing it. Again, another tree fell because of the slash that went right through it. He didn't even notice the fact that he was pushing chakra into the blade, nor that no normal blade should be able to do that. All he knew was that he was angry, and that he was simply cutting to vent out his anger. Left and right, almost every tree he passed was cut down. Akio and Shishi were watching the blonde from behind a bush. Akio was very worried for her master. She never knew Naruto had this much anger in him. Finally, after many hours, it was getting close to dawn and Naruto collapsed on the forest floor from minor chakra exhaustion. Akio slowly walked over to him and curled up into a ball on Naruto's chest before falling asleep. Not long after, 3 minutes actually, a young girl a little older than Naruto wearing a pink kimono came into a clearing. She was going about, bending down occasionally to pick up an herb, when she noticed that there was a boy a few feet to her left resting near a place that had the trees cut right through. He looked exhausted, but recuperating slowly. She walked over to him and saw the black piece of cloth on his stomach shift slightly. Then she realized it was actually a fox with black fur. She remembered seeing a giant fox at the battle that Zabuza fought, but this one could probably be held in both her hands. She knew who this was, the one who stabbed Zabuza and was about to kill him. She probably should have brought some weapons, and there wasn't enough water anywhere to use her ice powers. Crap. Maybe I could strangle him. No, the fox will most likely wake up when he starts struggling. Why did I leave my weapons? I could have at least brought a senbon or two, she mentally whined. She got closer and took a closer look at his face. Last time she saw him, she was sure he had blue eyes. She kept staring at his whisker marks and his blonde spiky hair. Before she could even realize it, she was already about an inch away from his face. She blinked twice before slowly sitting straight again, a blush on her face noticeable. She looked over at the fox again to find it was awake, making her panic. It looked at her from on top of the blonde's stomach. She looked back at the little critter. Its head to the side, so did Sheba to the other side. Then the fox turned into a weird black substance and turned into a platinum-haired girl straddling the blonde boy's waist, in a fox hybrid form with a black tail and fox ears. Haku looked at her for about 4 seconds before she fainted. Akio giggled when she saw the girl on her back with a trail of blood coming out of her nose. After a few more minutes, the ice user woke up. Just in time too, Naruto was waking up as well. The young blonde got up and looked around him for a moment before noticing the young girl who was turned away from him. She seemed to be wiping something off her face furiously while making sure he didn't see her. He quirked an eyebrow and looked down at his lap to see Akio, who was currently in her fox form. She looked at him with those puppy dog eyes that said, "I did something that will make you angry, so I'll just be cute and adorable." Again, he looked at the girl with black hair and the pink kimono. She was quite beautiful, he'd give her that, and had chocolate brown eyes that almost looked like his own. The girl was thinking along the same lines as him in the eye department. They seemed to belong to someone like her, someone filled with sadness and loneliness. Naruto smiled at her, making her blush a little. "Hi there. What are you doing here?" Haku quickly looked around and said, "I'm picking herbs for someone special to me." She bent down to pick up an herb from the ground. "Lady, that plant you're holding is poisonous." Naruto deadpanned. She looked at the plant and realized he was right. She blushed in embarrassment and let the plant drop, Naruto looking at her like she did something stupid. Well, she almost did something stupid. She cleared her throat and turned her attention back to Naruto. "So you're a ninja. It must be hard a life. You shouldn't be sleeping here, you could catch a cold." "Hey, not like it's the first time I've slept outdoors. And besides, I haven't caught a cold in all my life," Naruto said smoothly, remembering many times he had to sleep in the streets. Akio wrapped herself around his neck like a scarf and looked at Haku with some curiosity. The little demoness was sure she'd seen the young girl before, but couldn't remember. "What is your name?" asked the girl. "My name is Haku. I'm Naruto." "So, who are the herbs for?" "Someone precious to me." "Were you training here? It looks like it because of the damage," she asked curiously. Naruto looked over to where she was looking and realized how much damage he caused. His eyes widened and he feels a slight pain on his back. He looks over and finds Merciless's guard poking his back. He pulls the blade out, careful not to cut himself with the blade. He replaced it in its scabbard and stood up, stretching his arms to the sky. Haku had to hold back her blush as she could see his abs and arms perfectly. She frowned when she noticed he looked slightly malnourished for some reason. Naruto turned to her and asked, "Do you need any help with the herbs, Haku-san?" She nodded and they spent most of the morning picking plants and talking about their precious people. After that, they were saying their goodbyes as Naruto waved at her, smiling widely. As Haku walked away, her face took on a look of sorrow. "Naruto-kun, I can only hope I don't have to fight you at the bridge. And if I do, I hope I can take you out quickly. I'm so sorry," she thought sadly, as she walked back and disappearing via water shunshin. Naruto sighed and mumbled, "Better get back before they get worried." He started walking normally, but stopped after taking 20 steps when he realized something. If Akio was around his neck, why were there footsteps of a large fox following him? And that wasn't Akio's scent now that he thought about it. He turned his head slowly and was face to mouth, which is drooling, and saying, "Hi fish cakes." Naruto jumped back and got into a fighting stance with Merciless in his hands. Before he could attack, the fox got on its hind legs and brought its front legs in a placating manner. "Whoa. Heel, fish cakes, heel. Down boy, don't want to hurt your mate's brother do you?" It said in a cheerful tone, and Naruto realized this one had 5 tails. He suddenly turned into black flames before forming a human-like shape and turning into a cloaked boy a little older than Naruto with a few platinum blonde bangs sticking out from his hood. He also had a giant grin as he said, "So how you've been fish cakes? You treating my sister good? Or do I have to kill you if you aren't?" Naruto could tell this guy was serious. After all, who would have their fist have spikes all over it the size of his arm? They were at the tip of his knuckles, and the ones around his wrists were on like a bracelet, then curved to point in the same direction as his knuckles. And to add to the coolness, the spikes started spinning, the ones on the knuckles spinning clockwise and the ones on the wrist were going counterclockwise. It made no sound, but it still looked intimidating. Naruto his head to the side and asked, "Sister." The boy pointed at Naruto's neck, where Akio was smiling with her puppy dog eyes. Naruto-sama. Meet my older brother, Shishi. Shishi raised an eyebrow at what he just heard, while Akio looked sad and hugged Naruto now that she was in her human form. To make her feel a little better, Naruto started stroking her tail, earning purrs from the vixen sitting on his lap. Shishi was surprised humans were like that. He never knew humans would do such things to another human, a younger one at that. And Naruto was a kid the first time they attacked him as a 2-year-old, running a sword through a lung. A lung, goddammit. He was starting to desire the destruction of Konohagakure, but Naruto said he was being hated less and less at a slow pace. Shishi looked up at the sky for a moment, thinking of how to put it, then deciding to be blunt about it, and returned his attention to Naruto and asked, "Is it okay if I stay with you guys? It's getting bored in the demon world. And if you show that you can be trusted, I'll give you a little present, fish cakes." Naruto quirked an eyebrow at this. He was a bit excited that a demon would give him a present, but he was still a bit cautious about the young demon before him. According to Shishi, the demons could look as old as they wanted to, so long as they were able to keep moving. No use having a demon who looked like an old man and couldn't walk, right? Naruto put a hand on his chin and thought for a moment. Akio seemed to be whimpering, and she was using her puppy eyes to make him say yes. He looked at her for 3 seconds before turning to Shishi and quickly saying, "Yes." Shishi sighed. "You can't resist it either, can you?" Naruto shook his head sadly while Shishi placed a hand on his shoulder and said, "If you find a way resist it, you are more worthy than me, my friend." With that, he turned into a fox with just one tail and walked next to Naruto, who had Akio in her fox form around his neck like a scarf. Tezuna's house. As Naruto got close to Tezuna's house, he wondered what happened to the Haku girl. He knew there was something familiar about her, mainly her voice. He was sure he heard it somewhere, but couldn't place a finger on it. He shrugged and entered the house to find that Sakura and Tsunami were the only ones there. Sakura was reading her healing scroll peacefully while Tsunami was cleaning up the kitchen. "Where's Kakashi-sensei?" Naruto asked the pink-haired girl. She looked up from her scroll and said, "They went to the bridge to protect Tezuna while I stayed here learning this new jutsu. I already have 3 of the 7 you gave me done, so there's not much left." Naruto nodded, happy that she was progressing in her training. He found an old healing jutsu scroll one night and rewrote everything onto a new blank scroll before giving it to Sakura for her to learn. Sakura suddenly saw movement to Naruto's left and looked next to his leg to find a large fox standing there, its tail wagging. It was pitch black, just like Akio, and surprisingly also had Akio's amber-yellow eyes. Tough, it was big enough to reach Naruto's waist. She didn't know why, but she had a strange feeling that the fox's eyes were checking her out. It sent a chill up her spine, but it wasn't really of disgust. Before she could say anything else, Naruto noticed she was staring at his new companion. "Oh, and this is Shishi. He's Akio's older brother, so don't worry about him hurting you. He's actually a lot more playful than Akio, and I think he likes you," said Naruto. He was right. Shishi liked Sakura. She looked cute, she seemed strong, and she smelled nice as well, like berries in forest. He smiled and barked at her, making her blush. She didn't know why, she just did. She looked back at Naruto and said, "Kakashi-sensei and Sasuke should be returning soon, so don't worry." "But I wasn't," Naruto mumbled under his breath. Seriously, he could care less about the Uchiha. But as long as the idiot didn't bother him, he's okay with him being out of the house for as long as possible. And Kakashi, well, he was slightly worried about him, but not so much. After all, the man was a jonin, so he could take care of himself. Then again, it only took time before he himself snapped because of the annoying Uchiha. And when that happened, Naruto hoped he would be there to have a piece in beating the crap of that brat. He shook his head and said, "Anyway, keep up the good work, Sakura. Hope you'll be strong enough for what's coming up. I don't want to have to keep saving you, no matter how much fun it is." He smiled at her, making a smile of her own appear. She was always happy when Naruto was around. Being an only child, she didn't know what it was like to have any younger or older brothers, sisters. Naruto was the closest she ever got to a brother, and she was glad she was lucky enough to have him on her team. She almost had the urge to call him Ni-san every now and then. If you still don't like Sakura, well, too bad for you. Most of you didn't want her to be in Naruto's harem, so she'll be his surrogate little sister, Na said. Naruto sighed and began walking to the kitchen to see if he could help out in anything. On his way, he saw Inari at the dock next to his house through a window, looking at the sea quietly. Naruto felt bad for snapping at the little guy, so he walked outside and sat next to him. "Hey Inari, how've you been?" he asked, trying to be polite. The boy didn't say anything for a minute, then mumbled, "I'm sorry, Naruto-san. I shouldn't have said those things, and I'm sorry if I made you remember something you'd rather not have." Naruto smiled and ruffled Inari's head through his hat. "Don't worry about it, Inari. I guess losing a father and lacking one are different, but are also equally painful. So tell me, what happened exactly?" Inari looked at him for a moment, not sure if he should tell the blonde or not, but then decided Naruto deserved to know. He told him everything, from how his father taught him many things. Kaiser really is Inari's father in this story. How they would sometimes fish, and how his father wanted to protect the small town with his own bare hands. He did, but at a horrible cost. When Gato found out, Kaiser was killed in front of the whole town for his actions. At this point, Inari started crying and Naruto placed an arm around the young boy as he sobbed into Naruto's side. Akio and Shishi were watching from the house, both happy to have Naruto as a friend. Once Inari recomposed himself, he finished that he no longer believed in heroes after his father's death. Naruto made a silent vow to kill Gato, and soon after that, Naruto began telling him about his own life, seeing as Inari opened up to him. He tried to keep it all to a minimum, since he didn't want to tell Inari too much of the horrible things. Still, Inari remembered from the previous day what the village tried doing to Naruto. After a while, they started to just talk about the things they did. The pranks Naruto did, the times Inari and his mom would have fun every now and then. Pretty soon, they were laughing and the sun was up, meaning it was around noon. "Time for dinner," Tsunami called out to the two boys. In unison, two voices shouted, "Hi." Before the two boys were in the kitchen in a blur, Inari wearing a smile for once at the table. Naruto's smile faltered slightly when he saw the Uchiha glaring at the wall. Seriously, he glares at everything now. Akio and Shishi began hunting when they heard it was dinner time, so they left the house in a hurry to hopefully find a small critter or something. A few days later, each day, the genin and the one jonin would take turns guarding Tazuna. Naruto and Sakura would guard him one day and Sasuke and Kakashi would watch him the next. It was about 6 days since the encounter with Zabuza, and they were ready to fight. That night, dinner was relatively peaceful, with Kakashi getting either raised eyebrows or glares for reading his little orange book. The raised eyebrows from Tazuna and Naruto, while the glares came from Tsunami and Sakura. After a while, there was a knock at the door. "I wonder who would it be?" thought Tsunami as she got up to get it. Just as it opened slightly, Naruto heard the sound of a sword exiting its scabbard. With a single hand sign, he instantly made a substitution with himself and Tsunami, just as a sword went right through the door and into the blonde's stomach. Kakashi, at first surprised when Naruto was replaced by Tsunami, got into action when he heard the familiar sound of a blade cutting into flesh. Naruto hit the ground, clutching his stomach as blood pooled out of the wound, and the man behind the door grinned as he pulled the sword out of the door and cleaned it before putting it back in its sheath. He was in panic when he found a man with white hair and almost all his face hidden by his headband and mask behind the door, next to the blonde one he just stabbed. Kakashi's eye widened in anger as he took out a kunai to attack. The man, scared when he realized he was looking at the legendary Kakashi no Sharingan, turned around and ran into the night. Kakashi tightened his grip on his kunai and pursued the attacker. Sakura ran to Naruto's side and began to heal him with what little she knew of medical jutsu. Akio was next to him as well, opposite of Sakura, and placed her paws next to Naruto's wound, sending her Yuki into Naruto without hurting him. Sakura was surprised when Naruto's wound was healing, though it was very slow and he was still in pain and barely alive. His eyes were shut tight in pain and he was gritting his teeth. Sakura expected a scream or something, but she was impressed Naruto made no noise, just breathed more ragged. She remembered what he said the village did to him, about how he was beaten a lot as a child. She had a sad look on her face as she tried her best to heal the blonde boy. Meanwhile, Sasuke went to follow Kakashi, and Shishi was a blur as he was already out the door, following the bandit who attacked someone he instantly considered a friend. The bandit was scared shitless. He knew he didn't stand a chance against the legendary Kakashi no Sharingan. As said Scarecrow ran after the bandit, who was almost within his grasp, a black fox the size of a horse jumped over his head and pounced on the man. Sasuke appeared next to him, just in time to see the man be bitten and clawed by the giant fox on him. What was the most frightening part of all was that the fox had 5 tails, all having their hair standing on end, looking very feral. The man didn't even scream as he was killed in a matter of seconds by the fox once his throat was sliced. Sasuke hadn't seen anything as bloody and merciless since the day his clan was slaughtered, and it brought unwanted memories back. Now, one of Naruto's pets was destroying a man without even stopping. To make it worse, the giant fox began to eat the corpse of the dead man. Shishi, on the other hand, was happy. He was slightly worried about Naruto, but knew with 2 demons, one in his gut and another near him all the time, he would be okay. After all, Akio's healing skills were on par with the Kyuubi's, so no worries for now. And he got a meal, what better luck? He returned to eating his meal, but realized he was being watched. He turned his head slightly to the left and saw the Uchiha boy with a sick look on his face and the Scarecrow looking quite shocked. He grinned as the Uchiha fainted and the Scarecrow just kept looking at him with his widened eye. Until he talked, scaring the crap out of Kakashi. You know, it's not nice to stare at someone when they're eating, ninjin. Now let me eat in peace, said Shishi to Kakashi in a demonic tone. Kakashi did just that and fainted next to Sasuke. Shishi shook his head and finished up his food and walked to the 2 bodies on the ground. He picked both with one of his tails and began his walk back to the bridge builder's house. Both Sakura and Akio let out a sigh of relief when Naruto was all patched up with bandages on his torso. He was okay, but even with healing slowly would need to rest up a bit. He was barely able to stay awake, and the last thing he saw before blacking out was Shishi in a giant form, Kakashi and Sasuke being carried by his tails. As Naruto lost consciousness, Sakura almost screamed when she saw Naruto's second fox squeeze in through the door. Her mouth hung open, as did everyone else in the room. Shishi placed both Kakashi and the brat on separate couches and barked at them before returning to his regular size. They were still shocked, but were taken out of their freezing state when Naruto groaned. They turned back to the blonde to see him still there, though he was still in pain. Walking over, Shishi used his tail and carefully wrapped it around Naruto before picking him up as slowly lifting him up and placing him on his back. Now secure in Shishi's back, Naruto was taken up the stairs to where he would be staying for the night. Once settled in, Shishi left and went back downstairs. He walked over to Akio and asked, "Will he be okay, Nei-san?" Akio sighed and said, "Yes, but it'll take some time for his wound to completely heal. Even Kyubi-sama's chakra isn't fast enough, and if it weren't for the fact that me, Kyubi-sama and the Haruno girl were there to help him, he could have died." Shishi let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. If Naruto died, he and Akio would be forced to return to the demon world and not have any fun. No adventure, no fighting, no eating like crazy, nothing. And if he had to, he'd go straight up to the Shinigami, thrust his fist into said god's stomach, and take out Naruto and Kyuubi's soul just to have someone to befriend. Somewhere under the crust of the earth, a creature was about to chomp down on another one of his souls before it suddenly sneezed, getting snot all over the soul of the scared assassin who killed many families. "Damn mortals complaining about death," it grumbled, before continuing on with his lunch. After a few minutes, Kakashi returned to the real world. When he woke up, he found two large amber eyes looking at him with mirth, before his whole face was licked by a large wet tongue. He quickly pushed the giant fox of his face and backed away from it like a little girl who saw a monster. Kakashi noticed he was the only one in the living room, since Shishi took Sasuke up to the room they would be sharing with his team, leaving Kakashi all alone. Kinda. When Kakashi looked scared, Shishi chuckled and whispered, "Don't worry Ninjin, I won't kill you. However, it will be better to talk about this in a much more private place." Shishi wrapped a tail around Kakashi before they both disappeared in a blaze of black flames. Akio looked on from where she was resting and sighed. "Brother, I can only hope you won't break the poor man. I don't wish to tell Naruto-sama why his sensei has lost his mind," she thought, before silently returning to sleep. With Kakashi and Shishi appeared outside the house. Kakashi was still on his butt looking at Shishi in fear. Then Shishi exploded in black fire that almost made Kakashi faint again. Suddenly there was smoke where Shishi the fox once stood, and a large figure of a man was there, stalking towards him. It reared its head back, as if about to attack. Achoo! The creature sneezed. In Shishi's place was a boy around 17 with platinum blonde hair like Ino's, and he was wearing a large black cloak. Those were the minor features. What really caught Kakashi's attention were the eyes that stayed the same, the ears on his head and the 5 tails poking out from the bottom of his cloak. He made a peace sign with his middle and index fingers, smiled and said, "Yo." As they sat across from each other on the ground in front of the house, Kakashi nodded, still digesting everything the demon just told him. It made sense now. Naruto's control over the shadows, the way he was actually able to outrun every single Anbu in the village and barely even be out of breath. And when he was listening to how Akio met Naruto, he thought it amusing Naruto could talk to foxes and dogs. Only the Inuzuka were known to do that, and he was sure he had seen something like it somewhere. When he was still a teenager. He shook his head, filing that thought for a later time. He turned to the funny demon, who began cleaning his canines with his claw on his index finger and asked, "So you're not going to kill us, nor try to free the Kyuubi, correct?" Shishi nodded, then said, "Yes, but if the Uchiha finds out about this and asks to have our power, he will suffer. I don't care if you're his brother, his uncle, his brother's roommate, his sister's husband, his father's cousin's boyfriend, or even if you're just his friend. He'll be in for a world of massive pain. It's just that I hate the Uchiha clan and their eye. I hate that eye with every fiber of my being. They go all around, thinking they're all high and mighty, just because they have their stupid Sharingan. Stupid damn teams." He mumbled the last part with his eyes closed. Kakashi once again shook his head and asked, "How do I know you're no making all this up?" Shishi looked at him slightly annoyed and said, "Don't worry, the only reason I would kill you is if you did something horrible to Naruto and Akio. Now, don't tell the Uchiha about this, and you won't bleed. Not only that, you can tell your Hokage this and that's it. And also, I'm telling you this so that you can watch the bratty boy you labeled an apprentice." If he sees my sister in the wrong way, he'll die. Even Akio gets antsy if she's in her fox form for too long, and she might cuddle with Naruto a lot in her human form, making the Uchiha most likely get the hots for her. Now keep that Uchiha away from Naruto, and maybe he won't demand for power from the blonde idiot. Shishi was glaring daggers at the poor Cyclops, who was cowering in the fetal position, sitting in front of him with a cloud over his head. Kakashi nodded quickly, afraid for his life. Kami, all demons are as scary as a rampaging kunoichi, and I should know thanks to Rin. Kakashi thought, as Shishi pulled what seemed to be a piece of paper out of his cloak. He slapped it on Kakashi's forehead, and almost immediately, it disappeared and Kakashi no longer felt tired. He felt a lot more awake than ever, and even his eye widened more than its usual lazy self. He was pretty sure this was how the hyper Naruto once was. This might help, since we were talking most of the night and it's almost dawn. Shishi said, as he looked up at the sky. True enough, the sky was a deep purple with the few streaks of sunshine peeking over the horizon. At the end of this day, be sure to make up for the sleep you skipped. This will only work until you go to sleep, and you'll be sleeping for a lot more than usual. Now remember Hatake, one word of this to the Uchiha and you both suffer more than you can imagine. Be happy Kyuubi-sama isn't able to hurt you, or she'd most likely leave you crippled. Kakashi nodded quickly, then what Shishi just said sunk in. Shishi-san. Did you just say, she? As in, the Kyuubi is a, girl? Asked the confused Jonin. Shishi blinked a few times before sighing. Damn humans. We'll talk about that later. Now, we have something better to talk about. Shishi got a grin similar to Naruto's and asked, what do you know about that Sakura girl? It was almost noon when Naruto woke up in his futon in the corner of the room. He blinked at the sun coming in through the window and hitting his face. He groaned, ready to turn away from the light and continue sleeping, when the sound of a door crashing and a woman's scream reached him. This also awoke Akio, who was sleeping right next to his head, as they had been attacked many times and were awake in a second. He quickly looked to his side and found Merciless there and grabbed it before sprinting downstairs. Just as he got downstairs, he found Tsunami tied by her wrists being dragged out of the house by two thugs. Inari was across the room and shouted, "Let go of my mom." Before charging at them, one of the thugs looked annoyed and was about to slice Inari's head off, when a blade was placed right under his neck. He looked to see a blonde teenager holding a katana up to his neck and adding pressure, some blood coming down from the small cut under his head. "I suggest you leave her alone, unless you wish to die," came a cold voice you wouldn't expect from a boy his age. The thug didn't buy it and was about to slice Naruto instead, but two thuds made them look down at the blades that were once on their swords. All they were holding were the hilts, and Naruto's blade seemed to be glowing a light blue. The one holding onto Tsunami grabbed for a knife he in his pocket, but soon found that he had a black spike going through his lower left ribs and coming out of his right shoulder in a diagonal way. When the spike retreated from the thug, his body slumped and the spike returned to being Akio. The thug in front of Naruto thought this to be a good time to leave, but was stopped as he turned around and was met with Inari's bow and arrow. He suddenly felt a sharp pain on the back of his neck, then everything went black. Naruto looked down at the thug and began to tie him with some ninja wire. Is that what it's called? Then looked at Inari with a form of pride. Not bad, squirt. You rushed in to save your mother, even willing to give your own life. That's what a true hero would do. Though next time, make sure you're armed and not fight with just your fists. Which reminds me. Naruto rummaged through his pockets for a while, then took out a scroll and unrolled it. In a puff of smoke, he had a knife that was around 1.5 feet long. The handle was a black leather with the blade being around 1 foot. It had red markings that vaguely resembled fox scratches all along the blade, and the butt of it was a fox's head. Its sheath was next to it, a brown leather with a yellow sash around it. He tied it around Inari and said, "Only if necessary, use this to protect those you care for. It's a lot stronger when the sun is hidden, so use it wisely, got it? Inari nodded, happy with the gift, and strapped it to his waist so it hung by his left hip. Naruto nodded, then returned upstairs to get the rest of his things. When back downstairs, he quickly went over to Tsunami and asked, "Where are the rest?" She turned to him and said, "They went with my father to the bridge." Naruto nodded and ran outside, where he noticed that Shishi was growling at a few more mercenaries coming out of the woods, his 5 tails exposed. The black fox sensed Naruto's presence and barked out, "Go. I'll take care of Tezuna's family." Naruto and Akio nodded and they were off in a swirl of black smoke. Kakashi was surprised and thrilled with the power surging through him. He felt like a little boy on sugar high, almost every movement of his was a blur. Zabuza was equally surprised, since he had to make sure he wasn't stabbed by the strangely hyper Kakashi. Sakura was in front of Tezuna with a kunai in each hand in reverse grip, and had her chakra ready for a water jutsu if necessary. Sasuke in the meantime was fighting against the ice user, and was faring well, barely, okay, he was getting his handed. He had needles coming out of most of his body, making him look like a giant standing porcupine. He gritted his teeth and glared at the mirror in front of him, which was reflecting the Hunter Nin's reflection instead of his own. Even with his Sharingan awake, he still couldn't track and attack the ice person through the dome of ice. Haku sighed, quite unsure what to do now. She didn't want to hurt the guy, but knew he was the type of pricky one. She sighed, slightly relieved. At least Naruto wasn't there. And as if to mock her, just as she was about to throw another barrage of Senbon, a wall of shadows appeared to cover up the Uchiha. She looked from one of her mirrors to her left to see Naruto there, his hand inside a shadow that extended to the one in front of the Uchiha. Her eyes widened slightly. "Naruto-kun." Naruto sighed and said, "As much as I hate the Uchiha brat, I can't let you kill him." "Shut up, Dobi," hissed said Uchiha brat. "I don't need you here. I can take care of myself. And if you really were going to help me, why didn't you just attack while he didn't notice you?" He scolded Naruto. Naruto looked at Haku and shrugged before entering the dome lazily and mumbled, "'Cause I have a better defense than you, and might be able to pull something off. Now, get ready to use that eye of yours for something useful and keep your mouth shut." Sasuke begrudgingly did so, but not before mumbling, "Dobi," at the blonde boy. Naruto just sighed and began to spike his chakra, ready for anything. Akio was still outside the dome, looking for anything that might help Naruto. So far, Naruto had one advantage. The Senbon couldn't penetrate his shadow shields, meaning he was pretty darn safe from the Senbon. Now Sasuke, although he disliked him, he was one of the few that understood how lonely it is to have no one. He sighed and returned his attention back to the ice user, who immediately threw a barrage of Senbon at the two, hopping to at least place them in a death-like state for a little while. Again, with Naruto placing shields of shadows up, the clang of the shield that was harder than metal. Unfortunately, Naruto was getting tired. The shield may be strong, but he was tiring, and Sasuke was already down on his knees. Suddenly, another barrage to Senbon were heading their way, this time too fast. Naruto was barely able to place up a shadow wall, before one Senbon was able to lodge into Sasuke's neck. Naruto's eyes widened as Sasuke's body fell head first. Or at least, that's what it looked like before. In a puff of smoke, Sasuke disappeared and in his place was Akio. As Shishi slashed the head off of another bandit, he suddenly felt weird. It was like someone just sent a cube of ice crawl up his spine then stay in his stomach. Akio, he thought, wondering why he felt this way. He shook it off and tried to get back to sensing if there were any more enemies. Naruto watched in horror as Sasuke suddenly appeared where Akio once was, right outside the ice dome. Haku herself couldn't believe what this Konoha ninja just did. She remembered the small pup on Naruto's chest, and made more Senbon ready to kill Sasuke for what he just did to save his own hide. But before she could even throw them, a huge mass of Ki was felt throughout the whole bridge. It was enough for both Zabuza and Kakashi to witness their own deaths, and it wasn't even aimed at them. Naruto's body exploded in red chakra, all of it showing a furious fox face above him. His eyes became red and with a slitted pupil, his fangs and nails grew to become canines and claws, and his whiskers became darker and more defined. In a blink of an eye he socked Sasuke right across the face, breaking the Uchiha's jaw and sending him a good 20 feet. He then turned to Akio to see that she was barely breathing with the Senbon being so close to her heart. Naruto's attention was turned to Haku in an instant. His anger wasn't gone, and so far Haku was the only one close for attacking. Haku wasn't prepared for the hit that came towards her, and barely made it out of the mirror as it was shattered by Naruto's punch. She entered another mirror and threw more ice Senbon at the blonde in hopes of at least immobilizing him, only to have the foul red chakra blast them away and melt them. She quickly exited the mirror and aimed to enter another one, but her left ankle was caught by Naruto's hand, who flung her face first into the ground. His hand still around her ankle, he pulled her until she was right below him and turned her around. He lifted his fist, ready to pound the ice ninja's face into the ground, but stopped when he saw the last of the cracked mask fall off of her face. He gasped as he looked at her somewhat dead eyes, just staring back at him. He calmed down somewhat and the red chakra receded. It's you. Haku-chan. Naruto whispered. I come from a place where they hate all bloodlines, Naruto-kun. I am now the only one with the Hyoten bloodline. My mother was one of the very few that survived the bloodline cleansing in my old village. My parents were happy for a long time, and I came along soon after and enjoyed the same happiness with them for a while longer. But then I did something I still regret today. I didn't know it was a bad thing, but I made an orb of water float in my hand using my bloodline abilities. My mother scolded me and told me to never do it again, and to never tell anyone. But my father was there, and witnessed my manipulation of the water. The next day, he and a large group of villagers came to our house and tied us up. They killed my mother right in front of me, and I was next, but I used my bloodline to save myself. I killed them. All of them. Ever since then, I never wanted to kill again. And just when I thought I had no purpose, no reason to be alive, I met Zabuza-sama. He wanted me to be his weapon for when he was ready for his revenge. And ever since then, I had a purpose. The purpose to serve him. As she told her story, Naruto was cradling Akio's still form in his arms. She had changed into her human form, which half surprised Haku. However, she barely had any Yuki or shadows to help her make clothes, so all she had was a large black cloth wrapped around her small figure. She was breathing heavily, but whether she would live or not was hard to tell. Naruto didn't dare touch the Senbon needle sticking out from her heart, in fear that he might accidentally kill her. He just stared at the ground in front of him, looking like he was the one who just died. Suddenly, his head jerked up and turned to the left where the fight between Zabuza and Kakashi was being held. Haku turned as well and they heard the chirping of many birds. Both of their eyes widened. Naruto's because he recognized the sound immediately, and Haku's because she felt a great surge of chakra being condensed. Before Naruto could even say, "Shit," Haku entered one of the mirrors and murmured, "Sorry Naruto-kun, but I must save my only family." When she was gone, that's when Enarcursed. He gently placed Akio on the ground and disappeared in a flash of red light, intending on saving Haku. This was it. Zabuza was now being pinned down by Kakashi's nin dogs and his Zanbato was on the ground a few feet from him. Kakashi's Reikiri was slowly charging, more and more chakra being pushed into his palm. This is my only original jutsu, the Reikiri. Goodbye, Momochi Zabuza. It was an honor knowing you. The one-eyed Jonin rushes towards the swordsman, his goal being Zabuza's heart. Then an ice mirror appears in front of Zabuza and Haku appears, ready to take the hit for her mentor. Next thing anyone knows, Naruto appears out of nowhere in a flash of red before taking the hit full on. Blood spreads across the Jonin's face and arm as his jutsu goes right through his student's left lung. Naruto screamed out in pain once, but it didn't last long as he clenched his mouth shut and growled in pain. Zabuza was looking at Naruto like he was the strangest thing in the whole world. So that's why Haku had been acting strange most of the morning. She must have met him in the woods. I guess he can be trusted, and I won't have to kill him for saving the closest thing I have to a daughter, he thought to himself. Guess the blonde one was living. Unfortunately, that's when they heard the voice of someone everyone in the bridge wanted to strangle. Pathetic. Zabuza, defeated by a single Jonin and a group of kids, was the crap that came out of Gato's mouth. Said midget was at the end of the bridge, where Naruto had left Akio's slowly dying form. Next to her, Gato had his cane about an inch from her face. He looked down at the petite girl and grinned, something that angered Naruto greatly. Too bad this girl is dying, would have liked to have her as a whore of mine, mumbled the midget. As he said that, Naruto's features returned to being that of an enraged animal. Oh well, I might find a good one for me in the village. Naruto's hands clenched and unclenched, as his lips became darker and he grinned almost evilly. Kill them all, shouted Gato to the men. He would have added, but keep the women for entertainment, except that someone answered to his order. And the voice was enough to make almost a third of the thugs crap themselves. And it didn't help that it came from Orf lovable blonde hero. With pleasure, were the two words that came out of Naruto's mouth, before some red lines appeared around him, floating and swaying from side to side. He stepped on one side of Zabuza's Zanbato, making it spin and fly up to his hand, and held it like it was lighter than a feather. In a blur he appeared in front of a bandit, who tried to stab but sliced nothing but air as Naruto once again disappeared in a red flash, the red lines trailing behind him like streamers. Over and over again, he would appear in front or beside a bandit, sometimes even appearing in midair or out of the bridge, then disappear and go further until he finally reached a quivering Gato. Some of the bandits noticed that the large blade in Naruto's hands was bloody with fresh blood, and were momentarily confused. That is, until a dozen or so of the 100 bandits suddenly came apart and fell to the floor. Naruto walked slowly to the shitless businessman, who was backing away farther and farther. Hey, probably should have let Tazuna finish the bridge. Naruto growled out when there was nowhere else for the midget to go. Please. Let me live, and I'll give you anything you want. Land, money, women, anything you ever desired will be yours. The small mouse tried desperately to stay alive. I don't want any of the things you give me. All I want is for you to die, Naruto said, before decapitating the midget in a single swipe of the large Zanbato. Now done, he walked through the large number of thugs as if they were no threat. Had anyone paid attention, they would have noticed that every shadow in the bridge was almost reaching out to grab Naruto. He slowly walked to Akio's body, the large blade being dragged behind him and making very scary grinding noises against the bridge. He slumped next to the heavily breathing girl, her eyes half opened. I'm sorry, Naruto-sama. I failed you, she whispered softly. Naruto shook his head and said, no, you didn't. You took care of me most of the time, so you'll never fail me. Please Akio, stay with me. Don't leave me, he whispered back, a single tear escaping his shadow-covered eyes. Akio smiled at him and closed her eyes, already resigning to her fate. Naruto didn't even notice when he suddenly appeared in his mindscape, with Kyuubi's arms around both of them. Around him, the forest representing his mind seemed to be dying somewhat. The leaves were now crumbling and were falling, all except a giant tree about as big as the Hokage monument. It had red glowing leaves, and on the side, carved onto the wood, was the kanji for seal. Naruto-kun, I think I have a way of saving her, but I'm not sure what will happen to you. Kyuubi whispered into the blonde's ear. The trees around him suddenly stopped wilting, but stayed half dead. How? He asked, not looking up. In his arms, Akio's body was slowly vanishing. Her left leg was gone, and her right one was becoming transparent. Well, maybe if I pushed some chakra through you and into her body, it'll save her. However, you're going to need to bite onto her neck for me to do this. Not only that, but since this is going to be happening through you, I'm not sure if it'll do anything bad. There's a possibility that, just do it, Naruto said, already making his mind up. Please. Kyuubi nodded and said, oh okay. Here goes nothing. She placed her hands on Naruto's back while said blonde leaned in and bit into Akio's smooth flesh. In the real world, Naruto's body also bit into Akio, and all the thugs were confused before someone shouted, let's get him while he's still down. Some of them moved, probably to finish Naruto off, but were stopped when an arrow that came from the sky suddenly appeared in front of them. On the side of the bridge, closest to the Konoha Nin and the two Nuke Nin, was the entire village, all armed with shovels, pickaxes, and a bunch of other things. Now scared since there were very few of them, the thugs decided to make a run for it and left, making the villagers cheer. However, the cheers soon turned to gasps of worry when they saw the red and gray chakra swirling around Naruto. It was soon becoming more plentiful, and it seemed to go in and out of Naruto's body, then some of it going into, well, something black that he was biting into. The shape in his arms kept changing, sometimes a fox, or something between a fox and a girl. Suddenly, Naruto began to glow red around him, but his chest seemed to become very dark. Like a darkness was trying to come out of his chest. Finally, the light died out and showed Naruto holding a black fox that was almost as long as he was tall, and had 4 tails attached to its lower region. Naruto's appearance changed slightly. His hair had black highlights. He seemed to become a bit taller, about 2 or 3 inches. His nails seemed a bit pointy, not as much as an Inuzuka's claws but still rather sharp. Those were the only differences noticeable at the moment. Slowly, the fox in his arms woke up, her eyes fluttering open and her head lifting up slightly. Funny. I think I'm in limbo, 'cause there's a lot of mist. I don't think I'm in heaven, and I'm pretty sure I'd be suffering greatly if it were hell, were the first things crossing the new Akio's mind. She then realized something was holding her and looked to her left to find Naruto-sama. She noticed that Naruto looked a bit different, but knew it was still Naruto. However, there was something about him that he still seemed human, he seemed to have something around him. It was hard to see, and wouldn't be able to be seen by human eyes, but Akio's demon eyes saw it just barely. Around him was the outline of a black fox. Carefully, she managed to get Naruto on her back. She looked over at the Uchiha's unconscious form a few feet away, then walked over to him and spit on his face for good measure, before trotting over to a bunch of awestruck, confused, and scared humans. She looked at Kakashi with a look that said, I'll explain everything later, before heading for Tazuna's house with a passed-out Naruto on his back, and an equally passed-out prick being dragged by the leg via fox tail. In the forest, funny thing was happening in the woods near Tazuna's house. All around, black and white chains were sprouting from thin air, and in the center of them was a chained-up Shishi as he looked confused at his little sister, who seemed a bit older somehow. It was hard to explain, but he could feel that she was a lot stronger now. After making sure Naruto was safely resting in his futon, the Shadow Vixen had a bit of revenge on the emo bastard for using her in the substitution when still in the house. Flashback. Akio gently placed Naruto in his futon, making sure to not disturb him, and kissed him lightly on the cheek while whispering, "Thank you," into his ear. She walked out of the room, making sure to step on the body she, accidentally, left outside the door. Sasuke still hadn't woken up, which was a good thing. Akio dragged the emo into another room, completely bare of all furniture, before closing the door behind her. She then threw the boy into the center of the room with a loud thud, and reached into her shadow, concentrating in forming something in her hand. Pretty soon she's holding a black mallet, almost 4 feet in length. She made sure that the mallet was similar to wood, so she wouldn't kill the Uchiha. She had a feeling he would be suffering a lot after this mission. Raising the mallet with an evil smirk, she swung it down over and over again, hitting Sasuke where the sun never shines a dozen or so times. Had anyone been in the house, they would have heard the sounds of a mallet hitting some kid repeatedly. End flashback. Shishi gave a confused look at what his sister was saying. Naruto, protecting the Uchiha. He was gonna kick Naruto in the shins the next time he saw him again. Then came the part where Sasuke used substitution to replace himself with Akio. The result was to be expected. Naruto woke up to a killer headache, wondering where the hell he was. Last thing he remembered was biting into Akio's neck before blacking out from all the pain. Suddenly realizing Akio wasn't around, he began to panic until a soothing voice said, "Don't worry Naruto-kun, she's just fine. The marking was successful and you are now her mate." That was something the blonde wasn't expecting. "Q-chan, how is it that I can now hear you?" he asked Kyuubi out loud. They weren't ever able to do that in the past, and we're still working on it. Well, the marking process somehow slightly weakened the seal, letting me make a mental link between the seal here and your thoughts. Now it's not necessary for you to come and talk to me in your mindscape. One more thing, you should talk in your thoughts instead of out loud. Don't want people thinking you're crazy, right? Q-chan explained. Wait, so you're telling me I no longer have to go inside my head to talk to you? Man, I loved visiting you. Naruto whined in his head, wanting to always talk to her. This comment made Q-chan blush, as she didn't know Naruto loved seeing her so much. Maybe he and I could. No, why would he want to be with me? I'm the reason he's hated so much, she thought sadly. One more thing Q-chan. You said, marking. By that you mean what? I'm not sure how you will take this, but in demon terms. Well, you and Akio are, married. Naruto's jaw hit the floor. He was married to Akio. Before either of them could say anything else, they heard what sounded like an enraged beast roaring loudly. Naruto quickly got all his things before dashing out of the door and down the stairs. At the entrance of the house he found what was left of his team, the Momochi family plus Tazuna's family looking in the direction of the forest, which is where they heard the roar. He said a hasty, "Gotta go, bye," and ran into the woods. Any idea what that was? He asked Q-chan as they got closer to the sounds of the roar and the clanging of chains. It kinda sounded like Shishi. I bet Akio told him what happened at the bridge. Naruto reached the sounds of anger to see Akio staring at something black that kept changing shape. Sometimes it was a fox, sometimes a guy, and sometimes even a girl. The only two things that stayed the same were the yellow eyes and the tails lashing out from its behind. Even its voice changed from male to female, but stayed demonic. Let me go, damn it. The dam has to die. I'll show him what happens when you mess with my family. I'll burn his eyes in his sockets, then rip them out before force-feeding them down his throat. Similar curses were announced, one that made Naruto want to pass out from how gory it would be. He looked a bit closer and nearly hurled when he saw one of the tails rip in two. The figure seemed to get stronger as some of the chains started to break. Akio cursed and made more chains wrap around her. A few more minutes, Shishi finally stopped thrashing around and managed to get into his usual self. He was still panting, and his eyes were going around as if hoping to find the Uchiha, but he seemed to be slightly in control. Okay. Now, are you just gonna let the Uchiha get away with this? 'Cause no matter what you say, I'm gonna kill him anyway. You just wait till I get out of here. Shishi panted out, hoping to beat the hell out of the damn human. Hate to say it, Shishi, but if either of you hurt the Uchiha, he'll most likely go whining to the council like the damn bitch he is. However, I'm gonna make sure he gets more pain than anyone can endure. Naruto growled out, obviously wanting to kill said emo. Oh, don't worry boys. I gave him a special treatment, Akio said with an evil smirk. Said smirk sent a chill up both Naruto and Shishi's spines. After a moment of silence, Shishi finally said, "Say, that's a good look for you fish cakes. You look like one of us now. Sweet." He then turned to his younger sister and asked, "You said you left the prick unconscious, right Akio? Maybe I can still maim the Uchiha before he wakes up." The other two nodded and began walking to Tazuna's house, Naruto telling them what happened after Akio was almost killed. They were deeply impressed Naruto killed so many people quickly, and were curious on how Naruto was able to move so fast. So how did it feel to kill so many holes? Nothing like the thrill of slicing people to shreds, fish cakes. Shishi said with an almost evil grin. Naruto sighed. Truth be told, a small part of him did enjoy swinging the large sword. However, the whole killing dozens of men didn't sit so well with his mind. While I admit that the slicing was thrilling, the fact that I killed so many men doesn't make me really happy, Shishi-san. Naruto said, the thought making him slightly sick. Shishi threw an arm around the boy's neck and said, "First of all, it's now Shishi-ni-san from now on. You, my friend, are now part of the Shadow Fox family. All of us are behind you, ready to fight for you." No we're not. Akio pointed out. Yeah, I know. Just wanted to say that you're always welcome to the Demon Society should you ever need us. Now, second of all, you'll get used to the killing in time, my dear friend. Besides, if you didn't kill those filthy scum, who knows what would have happened. When they almost reached the bridge builder's house, Naruto finished with breaking Sasuke's jaw after using Akio as a substitute. Shishi whistled and said, "At least you did something to the Uchiha. And if you actually concentrated some Yuki into your punch, maybe it would have hurt more. Yuki is like a pain magnifier when pushed into you humans. It sometimes lets us heal you, but we mainly use it to kill you because most of you simply don't like us. It won't kill you unless pushed into you quickly, but it's like your insides are melting like rubber. You, however, are a bit more resistant to it. Since you had a small bit of it running through you since your birth, your body turns it into power instead of making it hurt like a bitch." He finally finished. Before entering the house, Akio and Shishi turned into their fox forms, both making sure to keep only one tail exposed. Inside the living room, they found Sakura sitting on the couch. Well, she was on the couch, but almost as soon as she saw Naruto she was across the room hugging him until it looked like his spine would snap. "Oh Naruto. I was so worried, and I thought something bad happened when you were covered in red and gray chakra-like stuff. Then Akio carried you here and dragged Sasuke by his leg and. Whoa, Sakura. Calm down. Well, first I gotta tell you a few things," Naruto said, calming the girl slightly. After retelling what happened at the bridge. "That damn bastard," shouted Sakura while hugging Akio tightly to her chest. "How could he do something like that to something as innocent and adorable as you?" "Yup. He's horrible for hurting me," Akio was thinking, an imaginary halo on her head. Naruto and Shishi sweat dropped, both thinking, innocent Mai. After that, Shishi went upstairs to begin gnawing on the Uchiha and everything was quiet. Until someone else just entered the room. The group looked over to the front door to see Zabuza walk in, both his arms bandaged up heavily. The tall man saw Naruto narrowing his eyes at him, then sighed and mumbled, "Don't worry kid, I'm no longer your enemy. But just so you know, I'll find a way to beat the crap out of Kakashi someday. Thanks to him and his damn dogs, I can't even hold my blade anymore. Best I can carry is a normal katana." Suddenly, a katana went flying towards him and almost hit him. It was pure instinct he was able to catch it and not get hit on the head. He looked at it and quirked a non-existent eyebrow to the blonde who had unstrapped and tossed it to him. "You can keep that one. Might fit your title a bit better, Demon of the Mist," Naruto said with a grin. Zabuza looked at the katana before taking it out of its sheath. His eyes widened as he saw what it had on the side. This is a katana I found about 3 years ago when I was exploring a few woods near Konoha. You keep this, if I get to keep your blade." Only fair since that katana is rather special. Just don't tell Sasuke. Naruto said. Zabuza looked at him, a grin on his face as he nodded. The fact that you're still alive is enough for me to say yes. Since all blades of the 7 swordsmen of the mist are half sentient, it would have tried to hurt you the moment you touched it. Guess that means you're stronger than me, Gaki, the swordsman said, surprising most of the people there. Kakashi peeked his head out from the door leading to the kitchen and curiously asked, "What do you mean, Zabuza-san?" Zabuza smirked and began his explanation, just as Haku came down the stairs leading to the rooms Team 7 was staying in. Each blade is almost alive, making sure to stay with one master at a time. The only reason it hasn't killed you is because it chose you as its new master. If you meditate with it, it'll become a part of you, changing to fit your soul and style, though still maintaining a Zanbato form. No matter what happens, it'll always be a Zanbato. Heck, even if you melt it into a smaller blade, it'll just suck on your chakra till it goes back to being a Zanbato. I don't recommend that, since it left me with chakra exhaustion for 3 days. Just try to make it seem more like you, or something you care about. Naruto looked at the blade that was leaning against the wall to his right. He had a minor idea on what to make it look like. It would most likely make the villagers go running from him, and probably fear him. A feral grin spread across his face, making the people there a bit nervous. Hey, this is gonna be sweet. But for now, I can't let the Uchiha know anything. In a quick move, he took out a scroll and opened it to show a storage seal. Pointing the seal towards the blade, it disappeared in a puff of smoke. He then got up and stretched before looking at everyone else and saying, "Gonna go for a walk. I need some time to think." When he was almost out the door, he noticed a smiling Sakura stopped reading the scroll he gave her and was instead running her hands through Shishi's fur. Said demon was currently wagging his tails and purring loudly. "I like this girl already," he mumbled out, a wide grin on his jaw. Naruto chuckled and shook his head, closing the door behind him. Outside, Naruto was having a small conversation with his tenant. "So, can you tell me what happened to me besides my hair?" "Well, only that you've been given greater strength, your sight, hearing, smelling is a bit more advanced from those of a normal human ninja, and your body will become almost equal to shadows when you're in them. Basically, you look very blurry in the dark. It's your chakra that amuses me. Well, the extra Yuki your body is producing to be more exact. Usually I would suspect I've seen all Yuki or chakra in the world, but yours seems hard to remember. It's quite rare, but I can't remember what it is." What do you mean by that?" "I'm saying that you're making your own Yuki inside your body. Normally this would only count for half demons, but you're more of a quarter demon. Imagine there's your normal chakra coils. Now imagine that there's another chakra core inside your normal chakra core. If you imagine some strange black Yuki wrapped around your coils, you'll get something like what I'm saying. So, I'm like a SHDOW fox demon. Well, not completely. Shadow fox have gray Yuki, not black. I need more time to see through my memories. Okay, so I have my normal chakra, your Yuki, and a super rare Yuki inside me. Sweet. Kyuubi didn't expect Naruto to be excited, so confusion was evident. What do you mean? With this, the villagers will believe it's proof that you really are me, more than ever. Hey, let the fools believe what they want. So what if I'm considered a demon? Neither demons nor humans seem to have too much indifference, so I'll gladly be called one. Like humans, some are good and some are bad, right? And besides, there's no way I'll let anything happen to any of you for the beliefs of others." What do you mean, any of you? What? I also care about you, Q-chan. You know about everything I've been through, so you know more about me than anyone else. Heck, you probably even know me more than I do. These words, though few, brought tears of love and happiness to Kyuubi's eyes. It had been a very long time since she loved by someone. Most of the demons feared her because of her title, but Naruto seemed to not really care what she was. He cares only about the person and not the title they carry. It's one of the reasons that I love him. That small thought made her blush slightly. Just then, Naruto took in where he was. He found himself in the middle of the forest, the same place where he had gone all out after saying stuff about his village. That made him slightly confused. He loved his village, but for some reason he was beginning to question his love for it. As if reading his mind, which she probably did, Kyuubi said, it might have something to do with Akio. When we demons mate another demon or a human, both of them gain characteristics similar to the other. Not much, but enough to understand each other. I have a feeling Akio is a bit furious with Konoha for what they've done to you over the years. I know, as I have also been forced to simply watch as you were mercilessly beaten. Why didn't you just let Akio help or something? If I did, the villagers would have stopped at nothing to kill me. And if they knew about Akio-chan, who knows what they would have done to her. I didn't want to take the risk. And one last thing, something I almost forgot. I love Konoha because those that care about me are still there. And so long as they are there and still care for me, I'll always protect Konohagakure and those within with everything I've got. Words of a true leader, Naruto-kun. I know you'll become Hokage soon. Naruto blushed a little under the praise, a wide grin spreading across his face. He sighed and took his new Zanbato from the ceiling scroll in a plume of smoke. Now, let's get to work, he said to himself, before closing his eyes and meditating. It felt funny. He could feel that there was something going on. It felt like his chakra was being sucked into the sword. Then there was the feeling something else was being pulled into the sword. Naruto-kun, I don't want to worry you, but it seems the blade is also absorbing some of my Yuki. I'm not sure what's happening, but it's not dangerous as far as I'm concerned. That, and it's absorbing your new chakra as well, Kyuubi said, slightly amused. Although she couldn't see the sword, she could tell it was changing into what Naruto's mind wanted it to be like. Finally, it all stopped. Naruto slowly opened his eyes and looked down at the new blade on his lap. A wide smirk appeared on his face as one word left his lips. Wicked. As Onyx's eyes opened, one thought came to his mind. Where am I? Slowly, Sasuke Uchiha sat up from his futon and looked round. He was back at the bridge builder's house. He slowly got up, surprised a bit that Sakura wasn't all over him. Thanked Kami for that. He stood up, his body sore from the needles that were once embedded in his body. He found he was only wearing his white shorts and had bandages all around his abdomen. Walking downstairs, he found Sakura and Inari on the couch, each petting one of Naruto's foxes. Where's the Dobi? He asked, though it sounded more like a demand to those in the living room. He nearly crapped himself when he heard a familiar voice answer him. He went out on a stroll. Now what does a kid like you want with him? Sasuke turned around to come face to face with Zabuza, who was holding his new katana in his left hand while his right rested on the handle. Sasuke was about to attack when he heard Kakashi's warning voice say, Sasuke. He's no longer our enemy. If he were, he would have killed you while still having the element of surprise. What? Was the Uchiha's oh so smart remark. Before he could ask anything else, Naruto walked in with a blade over his right shoulder that got everyone's attention. Attached to his back via chakra was a large blade that was probably bigger than he was. It had a red, 1.5 foot, leather handle and a butt that showed a skull with horns and a ruby in its mouth. The blade was black, minus the edge, and on the flat side was the kanji for fox, in red. What was the most intimidating were the 6-inch spikes running down the opposite side of the sharp edge, 9 in total. Each spike was red and had a black edge. All in all, it looked like it could slice through just about anything. Ladies, gentlemen, foxes and pricks, he said the last part looking at Sasuke. I present to you my new blade, Kitsune. Naruto declared, hefting the large blade on his shoulder. Everyone just looked at him with eyes of Holy crap. After what felt like an eternity, Naruto got uncomfortable and asked, so, how about them Anbu? A slight smile spread across Inari's face. He looked from his mother to Zabuza, who were having a small conversation in the kitchen. Even if Zabuza once tried to kill his grandfather, the young boy was taking a liking to the swordsman. He hadn't seen his mother smile that way since his father was around, and Inari could see small traces of him in Zabuza. Yup, all was good as he started walking outside to follow Naruto. Give it to me, said a demanding voice. No, mumbled another voice that clearly said, I don't care. You will give it to me, Dobi. No, if you don't, I'll rip it from you. Go ahead and try, it'll hopefully kill you. This went on for some time. Naruto was simply outside, showing Inari how to use his knife in combat, when the Uchiha started rambling about wanting Naruto's sword. Sasuke obliged and reached for Kitsune, but when his hand was almost an inch from the handle, black spikes came through the leather and were pointing at Sasuke. Naruto smirked when he saw the spikes. You added that, didn't you? He asked in his head. Kyuubi just smirked and crossed her arms. Even being a prick, Sasuke was, surprisingly, smart enough not to touch the spikes. Finally, he turned around and headed inside the house after mumbling, Dobi, to Naruto, who didn't give a rat's. After showing more moves to Inari, who learned rather quickly, they both went with Tazuna, who had stayed at the bridge to finish it. They were surprised to see most of the village there, helping the old man in any way they could. Naruto smirked and said, guess we should help as well, Inari. Yes, Naruto ni-san, said the boy, his voice full of enthusiasm. Naruto smiled at him and they both spent the day helping Tazuna build the bridge. Somewhere unknown, a man with black hair was standing near a tree, a crow perched on his index finger with a letter in its beak. The bird nodded at the man before flying off to deliver its message. The man jumped down from the tree branch he was on and landed on the ground with grace. He then turned and headed to ask a favor of his leader. A favor that almost everyone would think was insane. With Naruto. Naruto sighed and flopped down on the couch next to Shishi, who was curled up in a ball apparently asleep. Next to the fox sat Haku with Akio on her lap, the ice user petting Akio on the head and smiling. Naruto found himself staring at her face, her hair, her eyes. It was quite beautiful how she smiled and giggled when Akio began licking her fingers. When he finally realized what he was doing, Zabuza was next to him. You like her, don't Yagaki? Asked the swordsman, low enough for only Naruto to hear. He was quiet for a moment, not sure what to say. She's a lot like me. Her and I have gone through the same pain of being hated for something we have no control over. So I guess I do. He said, his eyes having a glint of sadness and slight anger. Zabuza nodded, having made up his mind when the bridge fight ended. Before anything else could be said, Naruto saw something on a tree and sighed before excusing himself. He went outside and found yet another problem in a crow's beak. It was a letter addressed to him. Dear Naruto, I don't want to sound like some impatient jackass, but I really wish to return home. Please tell me how he is doing. Write me back whenever possible. Sincerely, Crow. P.S. Make sure to say hi to Akio for me please. She's a nice girl. After reading it, he made a dozen or so one-handed signs and whispered, fire style, great dragon claw. Red glowing markings appeared around his arm and connected to his fingers, ending in sharp 3-inch claws. A spike ran past his elbow, about a foot long. He touched the tip of one nail to the paper and it was turned to ash in the blink of an eye. He nodded to the crow, which nodded back and flew away to its master. He then walked out onto the pond, sending chakra to his feet in instinct and saw Sakura doing some had signs before shouting, water style, water bullet. The pink-haired girl drew her head back while taking a deep breath. Suddenly, she threw her head forward and opened her mouth wide, letting out a ball of water that grew as it went farther into the water. Soon it was as big as a basketball and had disappeared into the horizon. Naruto whistled, making Sakura turn around to look at him in surprise. Oh, hey Naruto, she greeted. Hey Sakura, so how are you doing so far? He asked, giving her one of his usual smirks. She nodded and said, great. I got water bullet and shark missile down. What's next? Naruto smirked, then made a shadow clone and sent him to get someone. Moments later, Zabuza came out with the clone and stood in front of Sakura and Naruto. Shishi and Akio had followed them and were standing on either side of Naruto while the clone dispelled itself. What do you need, Gaki? Asked the tall swordsman. I need you to train Sakura in her water manipulation. She's good right now, but I'm sure she can improve a bit more, said the blonde, sounding pretty professional. Zabuza and Sakura both thought it was kinda weird how he sounded kinda older, like he's been through a lot more than he let on. Zabuza nodded and turned to Sakura. Okay Pinky, let's start with this. He reached down with his left arm and placed the tip of each finger in the water. When he took it out, there were small marble-sized orbs of water floating under each finger. Make the water float under your finger. The closer the water is to your finger, the easier it is to manipulate it. Practice it until the droplets suddenly dropped and then stopped a centimeter from the water's surface, until you can keep it afloat this far. Sakura nodded and started the exercise, the first time dropping before it was a foot off the ground. Naruto nodded and decided to have a word with Shishi. They both walked deep into the forest, and that's when Naruto noticed something new. He seemed to like shaded places a lot more than being in the sun. He shrugged and said, Shishi, Q-chan said I have a rare Yuki of some sort and she can't remember. Mind finding out anything about Black Yuki? Shishi looked at him and said, I'm not the type of guy you'd find in a demon library, but I'll see what I can do. After that he turned into his human form, this time with no ears or tails, and turned to Naruto. Now to teach you how to properly use that blade of yours. Shall we? For the next few hours, the woods were filled with clanking metal, shouts, and a few insults every few seconds. Finally, it was the day that the Konoha ninja would go home. Naruto woke and found his blade still beside his futon, right where he left it. He was about to get up, when he felt a bit more weight on his arms than usual. He looked down and found Akio and Haku, both of them in his arms. 3 words left his mouth at the moment. What the hell? Well, that's what would have come out, had Shishi not been there to cover his mouth with his paw. Hush up, Uzumaki. You wanna wake up everyone else? Asked the Black Fox. Naruto glared at him and asked, why do I have Haku-chan and Akio-chan on either side of me, and both of them wearing nothing but their underwear? Shishi just rolled his eyes while mumbling about, grumpy humans. Look, Haku and Akio were up all night talking. Akio actually told her everything about her and you, minus Kyubi-sama. After all, she already saw Akio in her human form. Now just calm down, lie back, and enjoy the 2 girls clutching your sides. I know I would be happy to be in your place, along with many other men besides the Uchiha, grumbled the fox while curling up into a large ball, apparently still sleepy. Naruto just sighed and did what he was told. After a few minutes of just looking up at the ceiling, Haku finally stirred and looked at Naruto with barely opened eyes. She then gave him a smile and huskily whispered, Good morning Naruto-kun. Naruto blushed and said, Good morning Haku-chan. I guess you now know about Akio-chan, right? Ah yes. She's a rather nice girl, murmured the ice user while laying her head back down on his chest. Then Akio seemed to wake up and looked at Naruto with the same eyes of lust she got since he became her mate. Oh, good morning my mate, she whispered into Naruto's ear. That's the same greeting he'd gotten each day, and he really didn't know what to do. Good morning Akio-chan. Can I get up now? He was getting a bit aroused from the girls so close to him. And he wasn't sure who, but he could feel someone rubbing on his crotch. Now little Naruto was standing tall and ready. Luckily, Akio just got off and became her fox form. Just remember, I get to snuggle with you every night from now on. And if Hinata-chan decides to join, we'll let her. Okay. She tilted her head to the side and I smiled at him with all the innocence she could muster. That didn't help her in any way. Now, you didn't hurt her, did you? Akio mocked hurt. Naruto-kun, how can you believe I'd ever do such a thing? Her answer was raised eyebrow and you're kidding, right? Look. She laughed a little and walked out of the room, passing through the door as if it weren't even there. Naruto just sighed and slowly slipped away from the still sleeping Haku. He got dressed and placed his sword on his back before walking downstairs. Lately, he'd seen Zabuza hanging out with Tsunami more frequently than anything else. He smirked at that and went outside. Something else he noticed. He seemed to like being outdoors more than anywhere else. Suddenly, Shishi appeared next to him in a black and green portal and began speaking. I think I found out a bit on that black Yuki of yours. It has something to do with all the elements, but in a much stronger scale. Best I can get is that the Yuki was thought extinct a long time ago, and that it rivals the Kyuubi's power. Naruto whistled out loud. He wasn't expecting that of his Yuki. So, I'm probably as strong as Q-chan. Maybe. Not exactly sure, but I have one more thing to check before giving you that answer. And with that said, Shishi went into the forest to hunt. Naruto sighed and sat down in a clearing. He then began working more on his katas for the kitsune. He summoned a few dozen shadow clones and ordered them to attack him. They all grabbed their kitsune and got ready to attack. My first super fight scene. Try to be nice in how it is. All of the Narutos stood there, waiting for the original to do something. As if a something had gone off, the real one ran forward and made a barrage of swings that very few of the clones dodged or blocked. Two attacked him at once, aiming to hit his back. Suddenly, he brought his sword over his shoulder and laid it flat on his back, blocking both attacks. In a quick spin, 3 clones were dealt with by either the butt or blade of his sword. Another 2 attacked at once, probably aiming to cut his head off. He ducked and stabbed one in the stomach before twisting and punching the other on the back of the head. He then jumped back and found there were at least 14 left. All of them then began frumming hand signs at once. The original's eyes widened as 14 clones shouted, "Wind style, great breakthrough." 14 bullets of wind went straight towards Naruto, ready to blow him to bits. Naruto felt a tightening in his gut and he instinctively willed himself out of harm's way. In a flash of red, he was gone and reappeared above the confused clones. Smirking, he came down and made a series of teleporting and within seconds, all the clones were gone. He smirked and thought, I'm getting better at this already. Better get back before they start, they worry too much. Team 7 and the Momochi family were now at the bridge, Zabuza and Haku having a private conversation while the Konoha nin were saying their goodbyes to the village. Naruto smiled at Inari and said, "It's okay, Inari. You can cry when you're happy." Inari tried to keep from crying, but was failing miserably. I don't want to cry. Why you cry too, en Naruto ni s-san? Said the little boy. Naruto just shook his head while smiling. Okay then, new orders. Inari looked up at him in confusion. I want you to take care of this place until the next time I come to visit. Got it? Why yeah, I won't let you down. Inari nodded, his smile probably coming close to splitting his face. Both boys gave each other big smiles, then Haku walked over to Naruto with a sad look. Well, see you later Naruto-kun, she said, her head hanging a bit. Naruto suddenly took an interest to the floor, unsure what to say. So, where are you and Zabuza going? He asked, scratching the back of his head. Well, he said that blade you gave him was very powerful. It was supposed to be one of the swords from Mist, but it was stolen some time ago. That's why there's 7 from Mist, and 1 missing. Basically, the one you gave him. We're heading back to Mist to finish off the Mizukage. Big deal. Anyway, hope I get to see you soon Haku. he said, extending his hand to shake hers. She looked at it for a second, before quickly leaning in and kissing him lightly on the cheek, making him blush a bit. She walked back to Zabuza, who had begun a conversation with Tsunami. She seemed troubled and worried, but nodded nonetheless. As the Konoha nins and the Nuke nins parted from the bridge, Tsunami turned to her father and asked, "So what will we call the bridge, To-san?" The old man thought for a moment, then Inari answered. "The Great Naruto Bridge." The villagers all voiced their agreement as the nin all went their ways. It was much faster reaching Konoha now that they began tree hopping, as they reached their home in a third of the time it took to get to Hai no Kuni. Once they reached there, they passed the guards and gave them the info, and walked towards the Hokage Tower. As they walked towards there, Shishi clearly saw the looks of hatred directed at Naruto. To put the blonde in less trouble, Akio returned to being small and on Naruto's head while Shishi turned into a belt. It was a good thing Sakura and Sasuke bought the story of Shishi going back to the wilderness. As they drew closer to the tower, Shishi suddenly zipped to the shadows of an alley and changed into his human form. He waved to Naruto before disappearing into the crowd of civilians. "Ni-san better not do anything rash, or they will beat him an inch from his life," mumbled Akio. Naruto just shrugged and entered the lobby. After getting a minor glare from the secretary, they entered the Hokage's office. "Team 7 here, mission accomplished," said Kakashi in his usual bored tone. After some papers were cleared, Team 7 was about to leave when Naruto said, "I need to talk to you, Gigi." There was something in Naruto's voice that told the aged Hokage that he would soon have a headache. After explaining his life, meeting Kyuubi, and what happened at the bridge. "So let me get this straight. You became Akio's, who is a demon, mate, and saved her after she was impaled in the heart by an attack meant by Sasuke. And not only that, but the Kyuubi is a female that you have grown attached to, and now there's another demon by the name of Shishi running around the village doing Kami knows what. And to top this all off, you mind repeating that last part?" "Well, according to Q-chan, I began as a tenth of a demon about a week ago, but I'm slowly turning more and more demon-like with each passing day. Soon I'll be a Hanyu and be nearly unstoppable." Deadpan the only boy there. "I'm getting too old for this shit," mumbled Sarutobi, massaging his temples. Naruto just shrugged and continued. "One more thing, Gigi. Something happened at the bridge, and I'm not sure what. From what Kakashi and Sakura told me, I kept on appearing in flashes of red." This got the old Hokage's attention. "It couldn't be." Minato said it might not work, yet it seems it did. The old Hokage stood up and walked to the picture of the Yondaime Hokage. He moved it to the side to show a seal underneath the picture. He activated the seal and a box appeared after a puff of smoke. He passed the box to Naruto before rounding his desk and rummaging through the drawers. Finally, he took out a key and also gave it to Naruto. "The key is to open the estate your father left behind for you, and in that box are letters from your mother and father." Almost instantly, Naruto opened the box and looked inside. There were 3 scrolls, a picture, and what seemed like a clear orb. He took out the picture and it showed a man that looked like him, minus the whisker marks, holding a beautiful red-haired woman. She had green eyes and a kind smile. Her skin was slightly pale, but beautiful nonetheless. What he noticed the most was that the woman had a slight bulge on her stomach. "Mother. Father," he whispered. His eyes slowly began to moist as he saw both of them smile. In a strange way, it seemed that they weren't just smiling at the camera, but at him specifically. He also smiled before bowing to the Hokage. "Thanks, Oji-san. I owe you." He turned around and walked out of the office. The old man shook his head, a smile on his lips. Then, when he was sure nobody was around, he took out a little orange book that he kept in a secret pocket, hidden within the Hokage robes. Naruto roof jumped as quickly as he could, Akio having a hard time trying to stay on his head. He was barely halfway to his new home when he suddenly felt a small chakra signature nearby. He knew who it was and smiled. He landed a bit close to the signature and found a square box with rock patterns on it. It was only now that he was closer that he realized two more signatures were with the familiar one. SSHH. He's here. He heard a small voice whisper. Naruto looked at the box questionably and kicked it, revealing a trio of little kids around 9. The one in the middle had dark brown hair, black eyes, a yellow t-shirt with the leaf symbol on his stomach, and gray shorts. The only girl there had gravity-defying orange hair in two pigtails, black eyes, a red and pink shirt, and dark brown shorts. The last one had brown hair, black eyes, and wore a gray sweater with tan pants. The thing they all had in common were the goggles on their forehead. That, and the middle one stopped using that helmet thing from before. Flashback. Naruto and the Team 7 were currently in front of the Hokage, having captured Tora for the third time that week. And it was Monday. Just as Sarutobi was about to give them their pay, the door swung open and a kid around 9 charged in with a shuriken in his right hand. "Old man, I shall defeat you and take the title of Hokage," shouted the little kid. Unfortunately, he fell face first into the floor. Naruto looked to see that he tripped on. Wait, there's nothing there. The kid got up suddenly and looked around. It just so turned out that Naruto was the closest to him as he pointed accusingly at Naruto. "You there. You tripped me, didn't you?" "No, you tripped on the air," Naruto said, amusement evident on his voice. Before the kid could say anything else, Naruto quickly grabbed his pay and sprinted for the door. Just then, some guy with a bandana around his head and spectacles opened the door and ducked when Naruto jumped over him. Before he got back up straight, the little kid ran between his legs and chased the blonde boy. Naruto stopped near a hot springs and chuckled some more, leaning on the wall while Akio was next to him letting her own laughs out. That's when he felt someone tug on his pants, then looked down and saw the little kid. "Are you afraid of me? 'Cause that'll explain why you ran away." Naruto looked at the little kid for a moment, then chuckled a little, before laughing, and then guffawing like a maniac. This only ticked the little kid off. "Hey, do you know who I am? I'm Konohamaru Sarutobi, the old man's grandson." Suddenly, he was slapped on the back of the head by Naruto, who continued chuckling. "Kid, I wouldn't care if he were your grandmother. Point is, you and I are almost surrogate brothers since the old man thinks of me as his grandsons. Anyway, the name's Uzumaki Naruto. This little one here is Akio." Akio seemed indignant being called little, but yipped at Konohamaru anyway. It was only now that Konohamaru noticed the little fox next to Naruto. The kid then looked at Naruto again, probably about to ask him something, when the guy from earlier appeared and stepped in front of Konohamaru. "Honorable grandson, please, you must come back with me and not socialize with him. Come, the shortcut to becoming Hokage can be triumphed if you follow me." Before he could say anything else, Naruto was behind him and had knocked him out. He seemed a bit unhappy that the Jonin was here, especially spewing some crap on the shortcut to Hokage. Shortcut my. This idiot doesn't know what he's talking about. Naruto placed his hands on his pockets and turned around to leave, but he found Konohamaru blocking his way. He looked at where the kid once was and back. "Wow, this kid's fast when he wants to be," he thought. "Can you train me?" he asked. Naruto looked at him for a while, trying to decide. On one hand, he didn't really seem like the type of kid to want everything in a silver platter like another Pompous. On the other, he wasn't sure he wanted an apprentice right now. Shrugging, he said, "I don't see why I can't show you a few things. Just don't go around thinking you're a big shot just 'cause I'm making you stronger. Hey, it's not my fault that the village treats me like a prince. Everyone only knows me as the honorable grandson, and doesn't even know anything about me," ranted the little kid. Naruto looked at him then smirked. "Guess I'll take you under my wing. After all, I'm gonna be Hokage one day. What type of Hokage would I be if I didn't pay attention to kids? Hey, I'm gonna be Hokage, so there's no way you will." Okay then, how about a rivalry? We'll see who becomes Hokage, Gaki. Before Konohamaru could insult him back, Naruto had already disappeared via Shadow Shunshin. End flashback. And here he was, his little rival with his two friends. So what are you guys up to? You need something. Just then, the kids made an introduction, all saying their names and having poses as they formed the Konohamaru Corps. They didn't expect Naruto to deadpan, cute. It sounded like he was trying his hardest not to make fun of them, so he just said that. After the other two introduced themselves as Moegi and Udon, Konohamaru decided to ask Naruto what he wanted to ask him since he came back from the village. Hey boss, will you play ninja with us now? You promised, remember? Naruto looked down at the box in his hand. He really wanted to head to his estate and go through these things, but he always had a weakness against children. He sighed before taking out a scroll and sealing the box inside, then smirking at the three kids. Then he heard a familiar voice behind him. Playing ninja. Don't you think you're too old for that, Naruto? All of them turned to find none other than Sakura walking towards him, her remark being more playful than mean. Naruto shrugged. What can I say? I like kids. No pedo. He returned his attention to the Konohamaru Corps before saying, you have a 10-second head start. As soon as he said that, the three kids were off and Naruto began counting. As he reached 5 seconds, Sakura stepped next to him with a smirk on her face and her body tensing. As Naruto reached 10, he shouted, now! And they both began running after the three kids. Konohamaru and the other two heard them coming when they began laughing. Hey Ko! They're gaining on us. What do we do? Asked Moegi. Konohamaru was about to answer when he turned a corner and bumped into some guy wearing a cat suit, with something on his back covered in bandages. He turned around and showed he was wearing makeup, an. At this point, said teen turns to the author and shouts, it's war paint. Watch it, twerp, shouted the man and caught Konohamaru by the collar before lifting him up. That hurt. Who do you think you are? Bumping into people, especially the Casecage's son. Kankuro, put the boy down. We don't want any trouble right now, said a girl next to him. She wore a light purple battle skirt and shirt, with mesh underneath. Her dirty blonde hair was tied in 4 spiky pigtails. Calm down, Tamari. Besides, she's not here, so might as well enjoy this time. Put him down, shouted Moegi, though she was incredibly scared at the now proclaimed Kankuro who looked like he could beat the crap out of all three of them. And what if I don't, girly? Then you die. Everyone was surprised to hear a voice so cold and deadly. Kankuro and Tamari didn't recognize the voice, but it was just as scary as her voice. Behind Kankuro appeared Naruto, his sword drawn and the red spikes pointing towards his neck. Besides, you wouldn't want a war to break out just because you were foolish enough to attack the Hokage's grandson. Not to mention my pupil. Kankuro gently placed Konohamaru down, who ran and hid behind Sakura with the rest of the corps. Now, tell me you're here for the Chunin exams, or I kill you both.